Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here. When I saw the invitation, I saw some of my favorite words: societies, membership, innovation. And I wanted to have the opportunity to come and share with you some of the insights that ASAE has been seeing. As many of you know, ASAE is a professional society that focuses on the work of leading societies, professional organizations, trade associations along the way. And in that position, we have the opportunity to look across different nonprofit organizations and to think about what's happening in technology, what's happening in publishing, what's happening in membership, and how folks are preparing for the future. So I wanted to share a few of those insights with you today. So when we look and we talk about change, I think a lot of us think about Charles Darwin, think about the different challenges of evolution. And it's sort of interesting because one of my favorite ways to put presentations together is to go and put a phrase into Google Images and pull that up. And I came up with this mashup. And I think mashups are a part of today's culture, where you take a meme about Obama and you mix it up with Charles Darwin. And then we've got this great phrase: it is not the strongest of the species that survive, but the one most adaptable to change. And you know what? This phrase is particularly pertinent to this audience today because it's actually not Darwin. It's actually a quote from the 1963 Journal of the Southwestern Social Science Association, where a scientist was quoting Darwin. And that phrase in that journal has actually gone to become better known than many of Darwin's words himself. The question that I think that we have as we work through the agenda today: what are the changes in the world around us that may require us to adapt? Darwin's thesis is not that we as organizations can determine the future. It's that we as organizations are affected by what's going on around us. And we need to lead our organizations to be in position to be successful, whatever those changes are in the future. So what are some of them? What are we seeing? First, we're in a period of tremendous business model disruption and innovation. Some of you probably arrived here at the National Press Club this morning by taking an Uber. Others of you took a taxi. Two very different business models that are competing against one another. 10 years ago, you couldn't take out your cell phone and have a private driver pick you up and bring you and drop you off. Now you can. 10 years ago, you couldn't easily access information across the world through the internet on every topic imaginable. Now you can. Airbnb. Maybe some of you stayed at a property you booked through Airbnb last night instead of a hotel. These new business models are allowing the consumer to make choice and to access information directly. So how do we see that in the association space? How do we see that in the society space? There are a couple of key evolutions that are happening in associations. If you went and you looked at associations 3 decades ago, you would have seen organizations that were very heavily based on a dues revenue income. Today, modern associations have a very diverse book of business: membership dues, advertising, meetings attendance, affinity programs, all sorts of services and consulting that they're offering to their members. Think about your revenue streams. How are you growing new areas of your business and cultivating strength regardless of where the future stands? If you had put all of your eggs in the dues basket, you would have seen revenue falling from being 60% of revenue to 16% of revenue if you were looking at an organization like ours. You need to have another way forward. The second thing that we're seeing is the growth of online and digital engagement opportunities. Certainly the access through the internet, the delivery of emails, but also the ways that the digital environment is changing the way that people interact with their organizations. Yesterday morning, one of my staff made a presentation and shared with me that 63% of ASAE members participate in our online community. Just to put that in context, that's 3 times as many people that come to our annual meeting. And it happens on a daily basis, wherever people are, whether they're traveling or they're in their office. So thinking about how digital creates a new tool, a new space for you. Next, we're seeing massive innovation in the meeting and learning spaces. The traditional model of having people attend a trade show and walk a trade show floor is dying. People want to be engaged in new ways to work together to create solutions, and people are wanting learning that's delivered to them where they are when they need it. Nobody wakes up in the morning and says, to solve the challenge I'm facing today, I'm going to sign up for a webinar next fall. How can you be where your members need them at that time? We're also seeing innovations in membership. ASAE, for its first 97 years, was an individual membership organization. Now we are offering the opportunity for organizations to pay one price and have all of their staff be a member of ASAE. So professional societies are also becoming trade associations, and trade associations are adding ways for individuals to be members. Innovation is the game. Diversification is the strategy. And through these all, we sort of have the Jeopardy answer. What's the common theme? What is engagement, Alex? That is the element that people are using. They're developing new ways to serve the customers, new ways to engage them in commerce, new ways to engage them through in-person and online strategies, new ways of doing meetings and learning, new ways of creating membership models that are tailored to the different needs of different individuals. So what's the payoff, and where do we stand in this? In 2006, ASAE partnered to do a study called The Decision to Join, and we partnered with over 30 different organizations, state level, national level, international level, trade associations, professional societies, to ask the question, why do you join an association or not? And within that study, we also asked the question, why have you ever been involved in your organization? Have you ever volunteered? And I thought you guys might be interested in this benchmark on engagement. The first thing that we see is that the vast majority of members never do anything other than pay you dues. These are folks that we call checkbook members, and the thing that we love about them is they have one of our favorite things involved, checks. They pay us each year. And that's a great thing that they're connected to our organization in helping to fund the work that we do. It's a smaller percentage that ever take on an active volunteer role. 1 in 7 that's involved in a ad hoc opportunity. That's a one short-term volunteer opportunity, maybe reviewing an article, maybe making a blog post. 1 in 12 that serve on a committee, meaning it meets on more than one occasion to accomplish a goal. And only 7% that step forward to serve in the governance of the organization. So is that good or is that bad? And what do we want to do with that information? Where do we want to move forward? Well, there's a theorist out of Harvard called Fred Reichheld. And Fred Reichheld invented the approach that many of you are probably familiar with, either by name or by practice, called the ultimate question. The ultimate question is when you're asked to rate on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the highest, how likely are you to recommend this conference, this program, this product, this service to a peer? And Fred's done this research across private companies like Harley-Davidson, across the government, across nonprofit organizations, and he's found patterns. The pattern that he's found that's strongest of all is that people who rate a 9 or a 10 are people who are helping your business to grow. They are promoters. They are folks who are so enthusiastic about what you offer that they bring other people to your organization. Folks that answer a 7 or an 8 statistically have no impact on your business. They are not enthusiastic enough to influence their friends or their colleagues. People who answer a 6 or below actually have a negative impact on your business. They're what he calls detractors. So I'm going to go back to one of my favorite management techniques of all time, which is called the stoplight method. Green is good, yellow's okay, red is bad. And we're going to look at the impact of engagement across the ultimate question. And what we see is that for people who hold no volunteer role at all, less than half, about 40%, are promoters. And so that's good. They're checkbook members that also are enthusiastic enough about your organization that other folks get involved. But more than half are either passive or detractors to your organization. What happens as people get involved? And here we can see that once somebody takes that first step to do a short-term volunteer opportunity, the likelihood of them being a promoter increases. And that continues as they serve on committees and then serve on the board. Engagement is a way to grow your organization by building a deeper relationship with your members and turning your members into advocates for your organization. So, another trend that we've been looking at is the amazing increase in time demands. The consumer today expects an answer, and they expect it exactly where it shows on that clock, now. Doesn't matter what time of the day it is, doesn't matter where they are in the world, doesn't matter how they're trying to access the information. The demand for you to help them solve the problems they're facing then and there has shifted tremendously. And they're doing this in the face of everything else that's going on. And I couldn't resist of just walking through this one really quickly for anyone who's been born in the last 60 years or so. Thinking through the way that we've wasted time along the way. It used to be that, okay, you're waiting for someone to pick you up. You go ahead and say, okay, I'm going to play a game of yo-yo. I'm going to just do something along the way. And then we started getting into video games and the old Pong systems. And then Pac-Man came along, and we're all shifting and changing. Then we had these little digital games you can carry around with you that came out. And then we got the social media. Now social media, we could talk about what we're doing instead of playing a game that someone else has created. But what is the picture today? Today, our kids, our members, our future are doing all of these things at once. It's a very chaotic, multi-channel area. So making sure that you're thinking about your members' needs and delivering information in a way that is quick and easy and accessible for them is incredibly important. And I wanted to share with you the research basis on why this really ties back to you guys and what I think you need to be thinking about. We repeated that decision to join study again in 2011. And as a matter of fact, when we did it, we thought that because of the economic downturn, we were going to come up with results that were different enough that we could publish a whole nother edition of the book. And it turns out that actually the reason people join remains pretty stable. So we had to find some other things to talk about. And one of the things that we noticed were these trends. We asked the question, how do you access the information you need to do your job? And what we can see between 2006 and 2011 is that things that are instantly accessible, things that people can turn to and get information right away, were trending up. And the things that are trending down are the things that generally took longer to produce. Wait for the next issue. Wait for the next conference. Wait until we have that print element available for you. Now, there's another way that you can sort of shuffle these things back in along the way as well here. And that's to look at whether something is formally edited or it's simply published directly by a peer. And in the study, what we can see here is that, yeah, there are some things that had editorial control that had a slight uptick, but there are a lot of things that have that editorial control that don't. And on the other hand, when we say, let's turn to what we find on the internet, let's take the next best alternative, people are turning that to those sources to get their information. This is critical. Yes, sir?
Remind me, what are these numbers?
These are from our decision to join study. So both of them had over 20,000 different respondents. And the question was, where do you turn to get the information you need to do your job? Percentages. Yeah, yeah. And just before we get to, I was trying to make a point, so I'm pointing out change. You can still see that folks are turning to magazines and journals as the predominant area. Need to pay attention to the trends, though, because the trends are telling you what's coming. How are things shifting? So ASAE is actually quite good at writing books. We wrote a book in 2006 called 7 Measures of Success, and 5 years later, I was going through the airport on my way to speak at the Washington Society of Association Executives, and I noticed a magazine, Inc. magazine, and it had Jim Collins on the cover, and it asked Jim to speak. It was an article interviewing him about the future of management, not association management, the future of management. And in the article, Jim Collins goes in and he talks about the shift from time management studies to organizational leadership, to total quality management. And then the author asks him to predict the future of management. And Jim Collins said, I believe that the future of management lies in the fact that we may be moving to a world of networks that are well led, as opposed to an organization well managed. The difference between a network that is well led and an organization that is well managed is bringing together a collection of trusted sources that operate autonomously. That's what we see in Uber. I need a ride, I'm willing to give a ride, and I trust Uber to make that connection for me. That's what we see in people searching out information from their network on Facebook. Can anyone recommend a good hotel or a good restaurant that I should stay at? And so they went on to ask Jim Collins, do you know any organizations that are good at this? And he said, oh, yes. He said, I wrote a book with ASAE a few years ago. And associations are good at this. I would contend that societies are as well. Your contributors, your authors, your editorial boards don't work for you because you pay them. They pay for you because you've set a mission out there to change the world. You've set a mission to advance knowledge. You're engaging folks in a quest. So how are you leveraging that network? How are you thinking about the rest of their lives and how to get their support for what you're doing? And that ties into the fact that networks are all about reputation. Reputation is the way that a person builds their personal career. It's the way that their organization builds their brand. And it's a powerful, powerful thing. It used to be that for someone to build the reputation, they needed to earn tenure. It used to be that for someone to earn the reputation, they needed to be a member of an association or a chamber of commerce. They needed to have a degree. Nowadays, where do people turn to find information about a business and its quality? Things like Angie's List, Yelp. Yelp, which was founded less than 15 years ago, has 67 million reviews. 67 million reviews. It generates nearly 500,000 business referrals per day. That's a game changer. And that's all about helping businesses and individuals connect. LinkedIn helps on the professional side. LinkedIn now has 414 million users. You can find an expert on any topic. Go home and have a little bit of fun. Look up and see if you too have an ancient astronaut theorist in your network. I have some, not in my first network, but a little bit further back. So thinking about reputation, how are you helping your authors build their reputation? How are you helping institutions build their reputation? How are you making participation in your society, in your journal, part of the reputation that goes for these folks, whether that's a recognition on LinkedIn or other areas where they're using that back in more traditional systems. But it's all part of what we call the zero moment of truth. The zero moment of truth is the way that people solve problems nowadays. They take out their phone or sit down at their computer and they Google. And they tend to look at the first answer that pops up, maybe the first screen, and accept what's good enough rather than what might be the best or most sound information along the way. And that's because we live in a digital and digitally enabled world. People are using their phones, they're using the digital information stream to advance their work in ways that never existed before. And it's challenging us to rethink what we do and how we deliver value. And I wanted to share with you an example of how you might rethink a process and integrate mobile technology throughout the entire value chain. I imagine that some of the people in this room have parents, and some of those parents probably are at a stage of their life where they take medicine each day. How do we make sure that this person is getting the medication that they need, that they have access to it, that they have refills? Well, what if we thought about how a phone could help this? I bet some of you call your parents to remind them to take their medicine. Well, what if you could have the cell phone do that for you? What if, in addition to having it call and remind them that it's time to take their medicine, the cap on the bottle would flash to give them a visual cue that it's time to take their medicine? And then, as they open the bottle and it keeps track of how many pills they've taken from it, when it's time to order a refill, the phone calls and places that order for them. And we know that when you understand medicine, that what time you take your pills is really important. If you start taking them at the wrong time of day or the wrong pattern, that can create all sorts of side effects or unintended medical conditions. So what if we had a report that went to the doctor that said, here's the pattern of how Eric's been taking his medicine for the last 30 days? And then what about all of us? What about us sitting back thinking, oh, I had to leave my mom this morning, and I'm not sure whether she's taken her medicine. I'm not sure how she's been doing. Well, what if she were able to enable and have a report sent to you that says, here's what my medicine patterns have been? Does this really exist? It does. It's called glow caps, and it's actually kind of one of the things. And it's really fascinating because it's doing a little bit of that follow-up, because every time you find a really good example, you're also like, okay, is it still in business? So looking at it last night, I actually found a society panel, and they were talking about this, and they said, it's a really good system for people who have trouble remembering to take their pills. But that doesn't mean it's the right solution for what everybody's needs are. As a matter of fact, there are different medicine reminders. There's actually another one that talked about young parents and how much stress they have. Well, this system wouldn't work for that. What worked for that was sending text messages to say, take your blood pressure and send me the readings. The point is, our technology has changed dramatically. The resources available to us has changed dramatically. The data that you can use is incredible. Think about how that can change your processes. And think about it at every stage. Finding a topic for research, finding people who might collaborate to research, finding people who will review the articles along the way, finding folks who will share how those findings are being applied in different areas in the meaning. How can you create an ecosystem around your content that engages people and uses technology to make that possible wherever they are, whenever that's engaged? And then I have a little personal stump that I like to get on, and that's about video and how video is changing the world. So many of you know the song Video Killed the Radio Star, which my 11-year-old daughter has declared is the best song ever, and I think is kind of ironic because my 11-year-old daughter really has no clue what MTV is. And that's where this all sort of came from in the first place. She watches YouTube, she watches all sorts of different things, she creates her own videos. She is consuming video content almost every waking moment of the day because they use it in her classrooms. They use it in her online reading books where they supplement the reading with videos. And the reason for that is that video has an amazing impact on the way that people engage and retain information. And it has an amazing impact on that zero moment of truth. Did you know that a web page with a video on it is 53 times more likely to appear on the first page of Google results than a page that does not? Go back home and move your videos to the important pages on your website to figure out how you can get that optimization going, because that trend is only likely to increase. Video on the web has quadrupled in the last 5 years. And there's one YouTube executive who predicts that 90% of all future web traffic will be video. Now that's YouTube, and so that's a little bit biased source. But what if he's only half right? What if it turns out 45% of the future internet traffic is video? Will you be findable? Will you be meaningful to your members? So Dennis Gaber said, future cannot be predicted, but futures can be invented. And I think that's why you're here today. I think you're here today to work with your peers to think about the future you want to invent for your society, the future you want to lead for your journals. And I want to leave you with a few thoughts on that, on what I would keep in mind if I were in your shoes, and then give an opportunity for us to talk a bit about the questions that we need to have answered. So what are some of the things that I think you need to keep in mind? First, your primary job number one, is to foster a culture of innovation. Foster a forward-looking culture. Make sure that you're not focusing on the trivial operational items of today, but instead looking forward to understand how your society is going to grow and engaging your staff to come along with you. The second is engage in these trends and start to play with them so that you understand them. I remember the first time I signed up for social media. I did it because Ben Martin at a conference said that I should. And for the first couple of years, I had no clue what I was doing. But I learned over time, and I watched to see what other people did to build their networks through social media. And now that's something that I have in my toolkit. So think about how you can experiment and how you can encourage your staff to experiment along the way. But not just your internal staff. Jim Collins is right. You guys have access to some of the most brilliant minds that are doing the most fantastic things around the world. A lot of them are way ahead of us on some of these things. And that either means they have success stories to share or lessons learned that we can avoid repeating. So tap into your network and think about how you can get your members engaged and helping you to be successful. Along the way, be comfortable that this is going to involve some failure, or as we like to call them, less successful things. It's fine to recognize that even the best baseball player in their best season only gets a ball in a fair play for 40% of the time. It's okay to have missteps. And then finally, something that we tend not to be really good at is recognizing that sometimes in order to do something new, we need to let go. My 7-year-old daughter went rock climbing for the first time this weekend, and she got paralyzed because once she had her hands where she was comfortable, she couldn't convince herself to let go and move her hand to the next place. The great thing is later in the afternoon, I was in the car with my 2-year-old niece. And I sort of made a mistake, because we all make mistakes and experiment, and I decided it would be fun to take her for her first time through a car wash. It was not a good experience. I don't think she's forgiven me. But the part that was really cool about it is in the middle of the car wash, which I'm thinking, do I put the car in gear and leave? I can't do that. My 7-year-old reaches over and takes her hand and says, "It's okay, Kate. Sometimes I'm scared too, and it's gonna get better." And she started talking about her rock climbing. So I hope that you can take that to heart too. how do we realize that sometimes you need to let go to climb to the next level? How do you purposely abandon to create space for your organization? But where we are now is we're at a crossroads. We're at a crossroads, and you're at a crossroads with your organization. You arrived here today down one of those roads, and you've got roads ahead of you, or the opportunity to turn around and go right back where you came from. The question is, what do you need to have answered? What advice is on what questions are on your mind? What insight do you need from the peers who are here and the panelists who will speak later to help empower your success? So with that, what I'd actually like to do is to go ahead and take 2 minutes to turn to the folks next to you and share with them either something that surprised you from the presentation or something that's on your mind that you're hoping to find an answer for, and then we'll come back and do a Q&A. So go ahead and take 2 minutes to meet the person next to you and share a question on your mind. Okay, thank you. I tell you, there's interesting opportunities as a speaker, and sometimes you sit there and you're like, I wonder whether the quietness I was hearing in the room earlier meant something bad or meant something good. And I see from your conversations that even if what I did was bad, you got good, and you have a lot going on, which is great. What thoughts and questions are we talking about? What should we make sure the whole room hears about, or what questions do you have of me? Are there any non-traditional methods and things you can do to keep on top of trends? Yeah, there's a couple of different ones. I mean, honestly, one of my favorite public sector ones is to follow on Twitter Trends Hunter. I think his name's Jeremy Guthrie, I think. And he does really interesting stuff about what's happening across different sectors. So I think that's fantastic. I also think that a really great thing about trends is to make sure when you're having your conversations today, ask your peers, what is different in your business today? Or what are you doing new that you're excited about? Because that's going to get you stuff from your close network. And then the other thing is I'll leave when we're done with this slide. ASAE has a daily e-newsletter that you can sign up to get trends information on what other associations are doing and what's happening impacting the association world. What else? Yes, sir.
So you talk a lot about leading networks of individuals as an organization, association. What about associations leading networks of organizations?
Yeah, so the question is a good one, which is it's easy to talk about leading networks when they're comprised of individuals. What about when it's comprised of organizations? And I think that one of the things that's inherently hard about leading a federation of societies or a national group that has state chapter or state affiliates is that very definition of breaking people up into different small groups creates social tension between the members of the different groups. This is a positive on some sides because if you look at our decision to learn study, for example, people will attend an educational program because they're familiar with an organization. Many of you are here, all of you are here, because you're familiar with STM. So ASAE has a chance to get to meet you. If this same meeting were the same time and it were ASAE, some of you would say, that's not my professional society. So working together can be a partner there. How do you do that? I think the number one tip that I can give you is always seek to define a superordinate goal. Superordinate goal comes out of the social psychology research of Muzafer Sharif, the Robbers Cave experiment. And what it says is, always try to say, what is the highest level goal we're achieving together? So you might not agree on what your specialty area is in an element of biology, but you can agree that you want to come together and create the best biology ecosystem that's available. So think about how you can always reinforce that higher level goal and don't get caught into the politics of the small pieces of, well, who gets to introduce the keynote speaker?
Hi, I'm Robert Harrington from the American Mathematical Society, and I was just talking with Michael here, and we both had the same reaction to the of-the-moment generation. Certainly for mathematicians, life isn't of the moment. It's often it takes a long time to stew over things and get to anything at all. So I was just wondering, within your study, culturally, did you look at, were there any subcultures that you came across that were just very different to what the overall broad study revealed?
Yeah, I think that that's a really great point, is that we can bring people together and we can have efficiency in treating people through a similar lens, but there's also a need to be able to recognize the niches and to serve those folks differently along the way. Yes, there are a lot of nuances when we go and we start looking at the different areas. Some of them are ones that would be apparent to folks when you start thinking about elements like age and generational difference. Some of them are less apparent when you start looking at people's mindsets and whether they operate globally or not. And those can really change what people's expectations are. I think what I'd have to point out to you, though, is that you need to figure out how to be this and that. Because mathematicians might be very methodical in developing their theorems and in investigating a specific issue, but they also have to stand in line at the grocery store. They also need to figure out how they operate in a here and now world. So how do you bridge those two things together? You know, and I think when you see some of the crowdsourcing platforms that allow people to do short bursts of work on very complicated issues, that would be an example of bridging sort of the two different sides. Yes, ma'am.
Darrell and I were chatting, and I liked his question of, have you done any research that indicates what turns people off or drives them, prompts them to leave organizations?
Yes. Have we done anything that causes research that talks about why people leave organizations? In the decision to volunteer study, we looked very closely at what causes people not to volunteer and what causes people to stop volunteering if they're involved. So on that side, the biggest things that I think you need to realize is people are looking for an emotional attachment. People are looking to be invited to speak, invited to participate, invited to be part of your network. And when that breaks down, either because you didn't deliver on your promise or because you didn't acknowledge their work, that's a huge part of why people will leave your organization. The second thing is that there's an adage in association management that I think actually carries well across all business and all commerce, and that's the reason that people leave is the reason that people join is the reason that people will leave. So make sure that you're getting people involved in joining your organization for the right reason. The best example I can give to that is Sports Illustrated. You know, Sports Illustrated is a publication about sports teams, and I only subscribe when I need a new windbreaker because that's what they've conditioned me to do, is to sign up when I can get a bonus of a free jacket, which really has nothing to do with the information, you know, throughout the year. So go back and look at your webpage. What do you have on there to join? If you get them to join for the right reason, they'll probably stick around, and then make sure you deliver on it. So thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to spend some time. I know that you're going to have a lot more conversations on each of these topics, and I hope that it goes really well. Associationsnow.com is the link to sign up for that Trends newsletter, and I appreciate the opportunity to be with you.
Wow, let's give him another round of applause. That was a great presentation.